Welcome to the Confident Marketing Leader podcast, where we empower you to make your mark as a strategic and impactful marketing leader. Each episode, join us as we bring in top industry experts to help you earn and keep your seat at the leadership table. All right, well, I am really excited today to welcome Michael Barber to the Confident Marketing Leader podcast. We are going to dive in a little bit about his history and kind of how he got to the role that he is in today. But first, I want to give an opportunity for him to introduce himself. And my very first question, because this is how I met Michael, was that I saw him as a fellow member on the LinkedIn Rising Stars of the B2B marketing world. So, Michael, how does it feel to be named a B2B Rising Star in marketing?
Always honored for these awards. That's when they come from places like LinkedIn, I think it carries a little bit more weight. There's an award for everything in marketing and agencies, of course. So we'll take it with a grain of salt, but appreciate it nonetheless.
All right. Let's do a quick intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in B2B marketing.
Yeah, sure. So Michael Barber, VP of Marketing at Grow Schools. And I've had just this really, as I describe my career, I think it's being in the right place at the right time with the right leaders around me. I am a consequence of being surrounded by incredibly talented people. And that really started at the beginning. When I got out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but had spent some time on the advertising side of the sales department at our college newspaper. And this was back in the day. I get to say that these days, back in the day where 95% of our readership was the actual paper. And we had just built what was the first .com instance of the student newspaper. And it got recognized by Princeton Review pretty quickly as one of the top college newspaper websites in the country.
Oh, wow.
Just so happened that 20 years before that, another person had gone to the same university that I went to, and that individual had started their own agency and was looking for summer interns. And that person called down to our media department and said, "Hey, do you have anybody that's interested in a summer internship at an ad agency?" And I was like, "Yes, I will go do that." That person turned out to be Jay Bear, which, if that name sounds familiar, written for New York Times bestsellers in our industry, really well thought of leader and thought leader inside of our space. And Jay went to work for Jay's agency. And he really set the tone, and the leadership team really set the tone for my journey. Ended up spending the vast majority of my career on the agency side, working in both the strategy, creative, and media teams, and founded my own consultancy after being in ad agencies for about 12 years. That consultancy was acquired by a really large B2B shop called Godfrey. Spent 3 years there building the creative team and leading that team, working on brands like JLG, Johnson Controls, and then stepped away during the pandemic or just before the pandemic and reestablished a consultancy, only to be gobbled up by a client about a year and a half ago. And I went in-house to lead a team across brand, demand, and PR for Grow Schools.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love that journey, and especially that you got early on hooked into some really great mentors and leaders to kind of shepherd you through the process, because especially in B2B marketing, there's not really a school to go to, right? Or classes that really specifically teach this. So that's great. What is it like, I guess, making that transition from agency side over to an in-house corporate marketer?
It's a wild ride, I will tell you. It's a very different experience. You know, working at agencies is not for the faint of heart, but there's a reason why people love it and why certain marketers do love it. It's the pace. It's the variety. It is working under significant constraints that sometimes you have on the brand side, but other times you don't. The difference, I will say this, in stepping out of the agency consulting side of the business and going in-house, it gives you a deep appreciation for both sides of that relationship. Having been on the agency side of the business for almost 15 years, I think I have a really different perspective than what the average in-house marketer has got that hasn't worked on the agency side, for just how agencies work, how they function, where they can play at both a strategic and tactical role inside of an organization. And then having now been on the brand side and being in-house, there's an entire skill set that you don't get as an agency marketer from the operations side of the business, from the accounting and finance side of the business, budgeting and P&Ls, things that you
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily get as much access to unless you're in the senior leadership roles inside of an agency. And so an appreciation of both sides, I think, has come out of this career being both in-house and at an agency, is just a better understanding of how what you do and what you leverage inside of both of these opportunities as a marketing leader.
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about, skill sets that are required. Cause I actually get asked this question from people who are early in their career trying to figure out, should I go the agency route or should I go the in-house route? I'm just curious, like, how would you describe to somebody who's maybe contemplating that journey, what competencies or characteristics they might look at in themselves to see, okay, I'll be a good fit for agency versus in-house?
I think you have to ask yourself, if you're a junior marketer, as to what really makes you tick. What's going to make you want to go to work every single day and get you excited about getting into the seat, whether that's at your desk or a virtual office, right? That we're so accustomed to. If you are looking for that pace and you're looking for variety and you're looking for exposure to different brands, what those brands are doing, then the agency side is going to provide that for you a lot faster. If you've got certain types of skill sets or things that you like on the operations side, on navigating internal team structures, then I would say go client side, because that's going to sort of satiate those interests that you may have. I will say I do think to be a more well-rounded marketer, I would recommend that anyone in the early stages of their career spend time on both sides of the coin, because it will give you, I think, a deeper appreciation for how work gets done, how these relationships work across teams. And I think it'll help you produce end results and campaigns and work that's that much more impactful when you have the opportunity to work with an internal team and bring in agency partners to help you execute those projects and campaigns.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I myself started in corporate marketing. I spent a lot of time working inside of Fortune 500 companies. So definitely developed the skill set of project management and navigating the political landscape of trying to just get stuff done internally, which then kind of going on the consulting side helped me have an appreciation for the just hurdle and the uphill battle that marketers have trying to get stuff done internally. It's not easy as we had a meeting and we all made decisions and then we left. No, there's always the meeting before the meeting after the meeting, the 2 meetings after the meeting. So I think that's good advice. Let's switch gears and talk, I guess, at the higher level, what's happening in B2B marketing. So we've had so much change over the last couple of years. I'm just curious from your perspective, what do you think that B2B marketers are doing right now?
What are B2B marketers doing right? I think more than ever, there are a few things that we're doing right. I think from a tech stack perspective, we're in a really, really good place, more than we ever have done before. And I think that's the reality of finding ourselves in a really mature demand gen tech stack environment. For the vast majority of the 12 or 15 years of my life on the B2B marketing side, you've been seeing all the MarTech players, the plethora of now tens of thousands of different players that are out there, gobble each other up and create really compelling tech stack platforms for marketers to use. So I think one thing that B2B marketers are getting really, really good at is leveraging those tech stacks than they ever have done before. And that's because they've forced to do it. It's also because the tech stacks have provided a lot more feature sets than they've ever have done before. And they've been able to stay within those platforms and build out, the tactile executions of leveraging those platforms in more nuanced ways. So I think one of the things we're doing really well on the B2B side is leveraging the technology we have at our disposal from a MarTech perspective. I think the other thing is, and I think this trend has been a constant in B2B marketing life, is we're really, really good at stretching our budgets to the benefit of the impact of the business better than consumer marketers, because we have to. We don't really have a choice. We typically have smaller budgets. We typically have much smaller target audiences. And I think we are really, really good at spending money in the right places because we have to attribute revenue to all of the different tactics where we're investing. Otherwise, our executive teams are going to hold us to account for spending money in places that's not returning investments. I'd say the last thing that B2B marketers, I think, are starting to do well is starting to understand that at the end of the day, at the end of every campaign, at the end of every tweet, at the end of every touch point we have as a marketer with our target audience is just another human. And whereas we distinctly thought of, hey, when someone sits down at a desk, suddenly their psychological behaviors, the way that they make decisions, they're different because they're in a business mindset. That was sort of the prevailing, I think, of opinion for many, many years inside of our space. And I think these days we're getting really, really good at understanding, hey, it's just another functioning human that's acting like they do, regardless if they're in a business mindset or they're deciding to buy a pair of sneakers. And that means showing up, I think, as a brand more authentically, more transparently, in more creative ways, in ways that feel more human than maybe we had done in the past. So I think those are the top things for me. It's that tech stack maturity. It's showing up as a more real brand awareness that, it's just another human on the other side of whatever the marketing tactic is. And then continuing to leverage our budgets for as big of revenue impact as we possibly can.
I agree with you. I mean, I've definitely seen the evolution of learning how to speak to a business professional in a more human way. And I think it's interesting because the people who are making business decisions, it's even more emotional than personal, because especially if you're managing a multi-million-dollar budget, that's a critical decision. You're not going to have anything really to compare that to in your personal life, maybe buying a house. And how often do you do that? Versus on the business side, it is very emotional. And people are worried that they're going to get fired, right? And we spend a third of our day at work. So it's like, that's a big deal. So I love that you called that out. I guess on the flip side of that equation, what do you think are some areas that B2B marketers could be improving right now?
I think you've got to understand that the context that people find themselves in right now, when you and I are speaking in the later half of 2023, is there are inherently geopolitical, personal, and any number of professional, whatever it may be, challenges that anyone is facing. And we have to appreciate as marketers that most of us don't have a lot of time to pay attention to marketing. And I think more than ever, we have to respect people's time. And I'm not specifically referring to sort of attention spans by any stretch of imagination. I don't think that because we find ourselves in this very loud, very noisy world, that our attention spans are getting shorter. But I do think we need to do a better job of appreciating that at the other end of that email, at the other end of that ad, at the other end of that campaign is just someone that's trying to survive and get through their day and make decisions that are in the best interest of the businesses that they work for and for themselves. And that means making sure we can show up in a way through our marketing that allows them to make some decisions or get to know our brands and our organizations in really timely, targeted, and relevant ways that respect their time. And so I would say the biggest thing where we've got opportunities as a B2B marketer is to respect people's time, understand the context where our tactics are targeting them, and act accordingly.
Yeah. And I looked at your website, by the way, before we were chatting, and I love the simplicity of how you guys are summarizing what you do. I think this is a really good lesson for marketers, because sometimes we get so obsessed with our own product or our own solutions, and it's really not about us. It's about what the solution can do for somebody. And I liked how on your website you have the solutions of, are you looking for money to buy your school, kids to fill your school, or money to run your school? And that's a very customer centric way of thinking about the offerings that you have.
I greatly appreciate you reflecting on that. We've been on a journey over the last, I'd say almost 2 years, but in earnest 18 months, where we took a step back, and our company has been around for 17 years, and we've added solutions to help school leaders get where they're going. And one of the things that we have first, let's say 16 years of that journey, is our products just cause challenges in conversations with our sales teams, with our client services teams. They didn't make sense when you were just having a conversation unless you were an expert in certain types of those products. So we'd use words and phrases and jargon that if I was to be on an airplane and someone said, what do you do? And what does your company do? I would say the line and someone would go, I don't understand.
I don't get it. Yeah.
And so we worked really, really hard over the last few months. And this is all credit to one of my colleagues and our copywriter and content strategist, Marin Smith, and myself, is we worked with our teams to really distill down, well, what is it that these things do? Like at the end of the day, what does the product or solution do for our school leaders? And landing on money to run your school, money to buy your school, kids to fill your school is not only just an approachable way for school leaders who are our key target audience to understand, oh, that's what you do. Really, really easy to understand. But when I'm on an airplane, to borrow that reference again, or even talking to my mom, who still to this day doesn't understand how her son makes money doing what he does, I can say, yep, we help school leaders with money to run their schools, money to buy their schools, and we help fill their schools with kids. And she goes, oh,
I get it.
Cool. I get it. So I really appreciate you doing that. I'll also say that comes out of that idea of time is, what we're trying to do as a marketing team is drive interest and drive conversations and ultimately revenue at the end of the day. Yes. But our first job is to ensure someone is interested enough to either pick up the phone, send us an email, chat with us on our website, call somebody that they've met at a conference before. That's our first job. That's what we need to do. And to do that, we've got to respect people's time and energy and their mental headspace and their ability to understand what we do and make it as simply as possible.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of, I think it's interesting. Like I've been studying customer value for my whole career, and I've been in B2B marketing, and I help companies with understanding that. And it is interesting that it's a concept that a lot of marketing professionals don't really understand. And that is hard, that work to get it simplified into a single sentence. It's like, here's what we do. The value that we provide to somebody is definitely an art form. I'm curious how you got the executive team to buy into that initiative, especially if it's an older company, right? They're set in their ways of how they present their company and talk about their company. How did you show that this was an issue or a problem that should be fixed?
This is a great question. We've been having these difficult conversations related to messaging and our brand for a few months. And so I've just come out of these conversations over the last few months and few weeks. And here's what I can say is that when you're fundamentally changing a brand and changing messaging, you are going to face headwinds and critics. There's no other profession, at least this is my view, that everyone has a opinion on inside an organization other than marketing. So everyone believes they're an expert, including the marketers, on marketing and messaging and branding. And so part of your job as a marketing leader is to bring the organization along for the ride in the journey to where you end up. And so you cannot do this process if you're evolving a brand or rebranding a company or taking a really holistic look at messaging. You can't just go into the ether, even spend time with customers, and then just come to the team and go, here it is. This is it. This is how you describe the product. These are the key messages. These are the supporting benefit points, et cetera, et cetera. You have to create feedback loops through this process. And yeah, that's going to take time, energy, and you're going to second guess your sanity at all moments. But ultimately, the end product, when you bring the team along for the ride, when you are circulating, here's what we found, here's the genesis of that messaging, here's how we chose to message things, and you create intentional feedback loops for executives, for your leadership team, for all parts of the organization. It provides the end product out of that is really, really strong and good work, but it's also buy-in.
Okay.
And so one of the best things that came out of this process as we evolved the company we rebranded the company to grow schools and worked on the messaging for our products and solutions was that on day one, when we launched, everyone was behind it. Everyone got it. It made sense. They've been brought along for the ride. And the biggest learning for me is if you're going to do this sort of work, messaging, campaign development, creative, rebranding, you've got to bring the team along for the ride because they will have buy-in they will appreciate it more. And even if they second guessed it or criticized it beforehand, they will have appreciated it that they at least had an opportunity to provide their feedback and their 2 cents to that conversation. So you've got to build the time and energy to make those conversations and those moments happen.
Absolutely. That's great. Yes. I think it's like one of those underrated skills I always say as a marketer is the ability to get buy-in. It's an ongoing effort and part of your role that you don't really see in a job description, but becomes like 90% of your job is collaborating and getting feedback and deciphering what people are saying so that you can actually get something done.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, what's the biggest lesson? I mean, you asked me this explicitly, and it's now coming back to me, I think, as we've talked, is what's the biggest outcome of this transition from agency side internal? And one of them is internal communications are 90% of your work inside of a brand when that's not the case inside of an agency. It is truly the thing that I've really had to develop and quickly over the last few months is the recognition that most of my job is just internal communications. And that's very, very different when you're working on the agency side.
Yes. Well, and here's a question for you. Talking about the elephant in the room, there's a stat that says only 32% of CEOs trust their CMOs. And you've kind of worked on both sides of the fence here. Curious what your thoughts are on why you think that happens and what are ways that leaders can start to rebuild that trust and establish trust with the C-suite, not just the CEO, but also the rest of the C-suite.
I'm going to answer this question in two ways. One, there's always going to be a CEO that doesn't have belief in marketing. And for that type of CEO, it doesn't matter what you do. So if you have picked to work for someone or be led by someone that fundamentally doesn't have a belief in the investment that marketing provides for the bottom line, then it's always going to be an uphill battle. What I will tell you is that usually there's fewer and fewer of those CEOs that I think exist these days, but they're still out there. The easiest path to creating relationship inside of your CEO when it comes to marketing and that CMO role is two things. There has to be trust from the very beginning. And so as you're going through that hiring process, it's figuring out how to have really honest, transparent, and authentic conversations about what are the expectations for this role. And so there is alignment from day one. Then it's about setting forth a vision for you as the CMO for the first 90 to 100 days. Those are your most important days that you are in the seat. What are you going to do to get through those first 100 days and the impact that's going to be around those first 100 days? And then beyond the 100-day mark, it all comes down to how does marketing impact the business? Revenue-wise, and how are you going to measure the things that are really, really challenging to measure that you still have to spend money on, like brand initiatives? What is the shared metric that the business buys into to go, yes, that's why we make those investments for things that we can't really see, but we can just feel. Without that trust and authenticity and transparency from the very beginning, the 100-day sprint that really allows for that CMO to define what they're going to do and how they're going to lead the team and the change they're going to make in the organization. And then always connecting everything that their team does to the velocity or revenue that it creates for the business, you're constantly going to have churn out of that position. Mm-hmm. I'll also say this. A lot of the fault of CMOs churning is just opportunities that are out there for us as CMOs. We are, at our core, a lot of CMOs are creative types, and we look for challenges in places. And some of us are really, really equipped to do certain things inside of an organization while we're not equipped to do others. And so part of that turnover is just us picking a different path or a place where we believe we can have impact. And also there's parts of it that are just, we start to pull the layers back in an organization and realize we're not going to be able to have as much impact here. And rather than, tarnish our own reputation or try and make change where change is not going to happen, we self-select ourselves out of those opportunities. So this circular, if you will, in and out of the CMO seat can be caused by a number of things, but the relationship that you have, not only just with the CEO, with your leadership team, as well as the people who are inside the organization, because you have to build belief across the entire organization, is really, really critical. And it means spending an enormous amount of time on building those relationships and that trust from the very beginning through those 100 days and continuing to do that in your work.
Yeah, and that's great advice. That really resonates with me. I think especially the impact piece, that it doesn't always happen as fast as you want it to happen. And so setting milestones, what shows that we're on the right path? What does good look like? And here's how we know, even though it's maybe not the big end goal that we achieved within that 90 days, we're on the right path. And I think getting everybody to kind of believe in that does take a lot of time.
It does. It's hard work and it takes time. And sometimes you don't have the luxury of time. So it's about setting expectations of what can and cannot be done in those time frames.
Yes. Okay. So the title of our show is The Confident Marketing Leader. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to build their confidence as a B2B marketing leader?
Welcome every single opportunity that makes you feel uncomfortable all the time, as much as you possibly can. Discomfort is a good thing in your career. It means you need to lean into learning or figuring out what's creating that discomfort. And when that discomfort goes away is when I really feel like confidence, it can be built. Because typically that confidence is coming from a place where you don't feel as though you know everything, or you do not have the capability to step into that moment. And so inherently, as things we can do for ourselves are to lean into that and go, what is it that's causing that discomfort? A lack of knowledge, a lack of control, a lack of understanding the nuances of what's occurring in this situation, right? It's figuring out where that discomfort is coming from and then solving for that discomfort. I'll also say this. In regards to confidence, I think that the one thing we have to understand is it requires repetition. Like getting confident in our work as a marketer, as a leader, it requires us to do things over and over and over again and fail over and over and over again, and being okay that we will survive the failure. The last thing I'll say is you got to learn how to say sorry a lot, because one of the things that I think builds the ability for you to be a confident leader is to fail, to recognize the failure, apologize for the failure, move on and build from that failure so that you're confident the next time that situation comes along. And so just, that the idea of confidence is it's just continually built and it's going to ebb and flow. But a lot of it comes down to where you're feeling that discomfort and leaning into it, figuring it out what's creating that discomfort and then trying to solve for it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think you do this, especially in your role, you have your own personal brand. There's a huge opportunity for marketers to, not wait for their company to catch up to things that they might want to try. It's never been easier for anybody to go build a website, build an online store, build a social media following, and start testing some of this stuff on your own. But I think that helps accelerate the growth and the learnings that then you could take back into your business because you've already done it on your own.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I've always believed from the very early stages of our career. And one of the things that Jay always said to us was, if you're not learning, you're dying. And that moment, those continual opportunities and moments to learn, whether it's through a book or through a YouTube video or through whatever medium that works for you, a video game, XYZ tchotchke, whatever that medium may be, TikTok, short form video, it doesn't matter. Pick your poison and lean into those opportunities to learn, because it will not only just make you a more capable marketer of understanding this is how things get done. It will make you a better leader so you can inform the work from a much better place. And it will give you, I think, a deep appreciation for those individuals who you are leading, is that you will have a perspective that they'll appreciate and understand, and certainly I think digest better when they know you're also on that learning path 24/7, 365 as well.
That's great. Okay, my final question. What is one action you think B2B marketers can take today and or one resource that you think would be helpful, whether that's your own tools or resources or somebody else's that you think you recommend to every B2B marketer that they must look at?
So I'm going to answer this question broadly, and then I'm going to answer it specifically. I think broadly, you have to choose where you're going to pay attention. There are hundreds of places and voices and any number of things that you can pay attention to, but you only have so much time in the day, and you only have so much headspace that you can absorb all of that knowledge, news, etc. And so choose where you're spending your attention. If you're distracted constantly by where you're getting information, too many newsletters, too many sources, too many people, you're going to lack clarity and focus. So you've got to pick the individuals that you decide to pay attention to. For me, there's a couple individuals that always bubble up, and I tend to focus my energy on individuals over publications, if you will. And so I'll make some very specific recommendations here. Ann Hanley, always been a fan of Ann's work. She does her fortnightly newsletter, just an incredible read that's available for us as marketers. Jay Baer is one that I constantly follow, my former boss, and has an incredible newsletter, but also any one of his social channels you'll get great content from. Musa Tarek, who used to be the CMO at GoFundMe, a superb follow on LinkedIn for his perspective and the shares that he provides. And then the last one is Scott Galway, so Professor Scott Galway, that's at NYU Stern. Just some sources that I look to that are part of my filter. And the last thing I'll say is this, is find the small tribe of people that can go along with on your ride for your career. People that are in the same sort of spot that you are in terms of your journey, and hold on to those people, whether it's through intentional Zooms or a WhatsApp group or a Slack channel or wherever that medium is, but find someone that you can, or a group of people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can build your careers together, that you can build references together, that you can be inspired by, because those people will help you, I think, more than any other thought leader, book, thing that you learn from. Those people that are along the ride for your career and are really in the same spot as you, that you're facing the same problems and change challenges and adversities. Those will be the people that you'll learn a lot from and certainly help elevate where your professional life goes.
Love it. All right. Well, amazing advice, and so great to chat with you today, Michael. Thank you. I hope everybody got a lot of value from that. I know I did. I was taking furious notes back here. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm at Michael J. Barber pretty much everywhere online, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, or Threads if you're on there these days, or michaeljbarber.com. You can reach me there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Confident Marketing Leader. I hope that you gained new insights to help you keep your seat at the leadership table. You can reach me anytime through LinkedIn and at shakemktg.com. Links are in my bio. And if you find this content interesting, or if you know another marketing leader who needs to know about it, please share it so we can help build up our credibility and make a bigger impact as a B2B marketing community. Looking forward to being with you again next time.